Presented by That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster, this is Shonen Jumping the Gun, the show where we set our sights on the first chapter of a manga and decide if it's a misfire or a bullseye.
Let's see how many rounds are in this magazine. Ladies and gentlemen, on today's episode, bring down the house lights, it's Star of Beethoven. Welcome everybody, it is I, your master maestro, Isekai Sensei-Sama, and today I am joined by a very special guest, the biggest Beethoven buff, B.
I mean, I do know at least like 2 Beethoven facts.
I think that counts for this series.
I about match the author.
Yeah, right. So, so Moxie is away. Moxie's on a boat right now. At least they're supposed to be on a boat right now. I didn't hear from them, but that's what they're supposed to be doing. So I have to step in and do this not by myself, but with a very gracious and special guest. Thanks for jumping on for this.
Always glad to be here, especially for another Weekly Shonen Jump series. I will never escape this magazine. My life is hell.
I did not tell Moxie who I was getting for a guest, so this is a surprise for them as well. So say hi to Moxie.
Hey Moxie, I'm replacing you.
Replacing them on their own show. Interesting.
It's important to be as insidious as possible, you know. You insinuate yourself into a podcast as a lovely guest, and then the second they go off on a cruise, that's when you go in for the kill.
Well, so today we are covering, as you heard, this is Star of Beethoven. Just dropped today, hours ago, the second new series in a week after the horrific murder of multiple series in Weekly Shonen Jump. No, actually, I think... Which one's this replacing? I can't remember which one was first.
This would technically be the replacement for Undead Unluck, at least by how I categorize these.
Oh, I guess that still counts as a murder then. Oh, wait, is that spoilers?
It was a fairly natural ending, but... So in both these cases, both this and the one that came out previously, Embers, they're replacing the desired endings of other series, them being a Mission, Yozakura Family, and Undead Unluck. And then the one that was a straight-up cancellation, Hakutaku, has not been replaced by anything. They've gone, fuck it, we'll run one-shots instead.
Right, so Hakutaku ended last week, and I think... What I heard was they're going to do 9 weeks of one-shots?
Yes.
Was that right?
Yeah, which...
That sounds like a lot.
We will receive Duck Egg, none of them, over here. And it's... It's probably a sign, along with these 2 series being of the rougher-hewn variety, that maybe there aren't a lot of rookie authors in the Jump editorial offices that are ready to go right now.
Well, speaking of one-shots and rookies, this series, Star of Beethoven, is by Morihiro Hayashi. Did I say that right? Or close enough?
Close enough, absolutely. I never say these things right.
From what I could tell, they only have one other work out, and that was a one-shot in Weekly Shonen Jump, Life Liar from Hell, from October 11th, 2022.
Yes, a Golden Future Cup entry. It did not win, but as was the case with the author of Mama Yu Yu's one-shot from the same Golden Future Cup, both of them have made it to serialization before the person who actually won. So, as it turns out, it doesn't matter if you win or lose in that competition. It's just are you ready to go? You've made it, you know?
So I find that interesting. We're gonna get 9 weeks of one-shots, and we've had multiple authors recently that are coming off of one-shots directly into serialization. So maybe they're working on bringing up the newbies.
And I think they're probably feeling the need for that churn a bit more now that they've lost two of their longest running series that aren't like One Piece or Hunter x Hunter. To the point where I think Roboco is now the longest running series that isn't One Piece or Hunter x Hunter, which is... That feels wrong to me. That makes me feel very old.
I think Moxie was looking into it, and they said that's me and Roboco, which was it 2021? I think it was. Is that?
Oh, yeah, I want to say it was.
It's very recent, especially when you look at Hunter x Hunter or One Piece, and you go, "Wait, these have been going on forever."
Yeah, 2020, July 2020. That's and it used to be the case.
I guess that is 5 years, isn't it? Oh my god.
Oh yeah, but I think. Oh, yeah, that is actually longer than you'd think. I guess because the chapters are shorter as well, it weighs in at 20 volumes, which feels like less. That would normally be about 4 years for a full-size series. But I just think when I came into Jump, like, it had all these massively long series, you know. Obviously, it had Kochikame, but it had your Bleach, your Gintama, Ice Shield 21, Prince of Tennis. Like, everything was in that sort of 30s to 40s range, and some of those went as far as 70 volumes. So it's like... Definitely a different environment when I was the target audience.
Well, I feel after last week, maybe they're trying to target you again, right?
Yeah, they certainly are trying. Sports and music. It's like they know the sort of things I like. Whether they're doing them well remains to be seen. But I'm optimistic.
They must have heard you saying you were gonna drop Weekly Shonen Jump, and they were like, "We gotta get B back."
Every time I threaten to leave, they're like, "No, it's not even out of a desire to keep me. They just want to torture me forever."
I have high hopes for Embers. I was happy with that.
Like the panel to panel storytelling's not super hot, but it's got that oh god, this is going to sound so corny when it's called Embers. It's got that sort of fire in it that makes it an interesting read. So it's
we made plenty of those jokes last week.
Yeah, it could develop well, as could this maybe.
Yeah. Well, before we find out how we feel about this one, it's time for Moxie's patented. I forget what they call it. Damn it! I don't have. Mach Speed Summary. I didn't come up with my own, so that's the same thing as always. Within the tiny universe known as classical music lives the tribe called pianists, who play the instrument called the piano. A quote from Hiroko Nakamura from The Savages Called Pianists. In an apartment of moderate size, enough to comfortably contain an upright piano, we join our protagonist, Ichiro Yaso, as he's awoken from a night spent on the couch by the ring of his phone. The friendly voice of an underclassman on the phone is met with contempt by Yaso, as he doesn't want to be awoken so early in the morning during summer vacation. They are calling about a composition they requested Yaso play, but he says he doesn't play piano anymore. Wrapping up their call, Yaso is reminded that it is, in fact, the first day of a new term, which he flatly rejects in favor of naming the day August 32nd. A summer break extension, he calls it. Leaving the apartment, he heads to the store to get some noodles for breakfast. Yaso heads to the store where he works part-time, but finds the noodles he wants out of stock. He didn't want the gappo noodles, but the chilled ramen noodles. His boss at the store, currently working a shift, tells him he needs to get to school and not to waste his youth. Their banter is interrupted by the ringing of the chime, over and over. Standing before the door, as it opens and closes over and over, is a large, squared figure of a man with white, crinkled hair, standing up from his head as if it was scared to touch him. As the manager calls out to him, the man looks up, eyes wide in an intense glare. The manager, taken aback, tells Yasso to deal with this one. The man opens his mouth to speak, a look of shock gripping his face. Wo bin ich? Wieso lebe ich? Yasso recognizes that he's speaking German. The manager tries to communicate. Excuse me, sir. Are you speaker English? The man, completely ignoring this poor attempt at English, is speaking to himself as he looks at his hands. Now that we, the audience, understand German, we see he is amazed to find himself alive and marveling at the sounds he can hear. It all seems to be too much. Yasso is surprised by the words, but he speaks up. Kann ich Ihnen helfen? The manager is surprised to learn that Yasso speaks German, as is the strange man, who rushes over and grabs Yasso in excitement. After some mild cultural differences, the man is incredulous that Yasso doesn't know who he is. As the sun peeks over a building and silhouettes him, he reveals that he is none other than Ludwig van Beethoven. Beethoven? The German composer and pianist who died in 1827? Okay, yeah, sure. Yasso tells the manager to call the cops. But the manager insists that the cops being here during the morning rush will be bad for business. So could Yasso please try luring him away? Shortly after, we find the man calling himself Beethoven enjoying a breakfast, courtesy of Yasso, at a Johnny's Diner, legally distinct from anything resembling a Denny's. Yasso has not come around on this man actually being Beethoven. Heck, even if he's just a weird cosplayer, at least he should pretend to be deaf. But the man does seem thoroughly confused at his surroundings, and when he hears what year it is, he is shocked to the point of exclamation. But he quickly resolves himself to his current situation to the point of a chuckle, that in spite of how long it's been, his name is still known. Sometime later, we see that Yasso has taken this man to a mall. The man's constant amazement at all the technology gives Yasso pause as to his authenticity. But here they are. They found a piano as the man requested. Yasso will leave him to it now. But he's surprised to run into two girls from his school, an elite music academy. One of the girls questions him about playing the piano, to which Yasso tells her that he doesn't play it anymore. She's really upset about this for reasons we'll have to wait until subsequent chapters to find out, but for now, she forces him to play the piano in the middle of this mall as people gather around. As Yasso sits at the piano, frozen, the old man sits next to him and goads him to play. Yasso explains that he failed in a major music competition and hasn't played in 2 years, and doesn't think he can now. The man scoffs, saying that to someone who has lost his hearing and health, not playing because of a little thing like losing a competition is trivial. He explains that Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, which they've been speaking of this whole time, was written through that strife, and that its completion was the flash of salvation at the end of a prayer, pleaded in isolation. But the more words one uses, the cheaper they seem. And for these men, they've pledged their souls to the music. If Yasso is a pianist, he will know of what the man speaks of. And with a resounding strike of the keys, he begins to play. The music reverberates through the space as the two seem to pull the notes from the keys. They are taken away by it, and as Yasso feels the weight of these 2 years in his fingers, he starts to have a thought that this man, seemingly out of time, might really, truly be the man himself. But of course, the man has been saying that the whole time. The piece ended, the crowd around them claps. Yasso is shocked that he feels invigorated from the impromptu concert. Beethoven himself revels in the applause, thinking of how long it's been since he's heard that sound. He remembers himself on his deathbed, lamenting at the comedy that is life. But here, in this strange land that he finds himself in, he finds a new purpose. As in comedy, where the torment of hell gives way to paradise, so too will Beethoven find his final paradise by completing his grand and final work. He will take Yasso as his disciple. And there you have it.
There's the plot. There's only one slight factual error that I had to check while you were reading it, because I wasn't 100%. Yasso does not go to the same school as the girls.
Really?
Yeah, to the point I had to go and double check it, because it's the crowd at one point. It's like, oh, the students are getting their friend to play, but that guy's uniform is totally different from theirs. So they don't explicitly say it, but they say it. It's like it's a real. I think so. I remember
that. I remember that part, but I thought that they were talking about it as in like he's not dressed to go to school at all.
No, I think the idea is that with the 2 years where he's not been playing, he would not be in an elite musical academy.
Well, that does make sense.
Yeah, it would stand out a little, I think. But again, it's part of the thing, to give the first opinion on this chapter, kind of part of one of the main problems the series has, which is that it's not 100% clear on everything, and not in like we'll fill you in later, just in it doesn't concern itself too much with proper exposition, despite the fact that one of the first things that's said is someone on the phone going, "Hey, I'm your friend."
Well, I mean, they did sort of wave that away of like, that guy's calling him his friend, even though he shouldn't be. But
yeah, he's trying to coerce or convince Yasso to come to school.
There was a little bit of that sort of like dissonance in, the cohesiveness of the actual details, because they were talking, when he was talking on the phone with that guy, he was like, "Hey, about that piece that I wanted you to play." And then it's like, well, wait a minute, he hasn't played for 2 years, but he was just talking to this guy like a couple weeks ago about playing something. Like, what's going on here? I don't think we're supposed to pay too close attention to that stuff.
I think it is literally just going, here's like the loose skeletal framework of a guy's life, because we want to get to the gimmick.
Right.
And it's a good gimmick. I like a good man at a time storyline. I really like the series Tomai Romai by Marie Yamazaki, which is about like a guy time slipping from ancient Rome to modern Japan to learn about bathhouses. And this is not that, but I think it's got the potential, because when you separate someone out, you get to reveal things that are different or interesting through the times.
I do. I'm wondering where they're going with this, because, so first of all, not an Exorcist series. Yay, that's good. He seems to be the actual Beethoven, pulled out of time, but then also healed. And so there's this question of like, what is this going to be? Is there a mystery that we're solving here? Or is it just, we're going to hand wave away that Beethoven's here and this is all about playing the piano and music stuff? Like, is it going to revolve around Yasso and his life going back into music? There's still a lot of questions that are completely unresolved from this.
And it's like, there's ways it could go that would be very interesting. Like, maybe they build a cover for him at Yasso's school and go, hey, here's our new music teacher, there's potential there. But it's very loose. It's very loose. And it's like, the fact that, he just, apparently from the second he dies, he just immediately apparates into, I don't know, what you'd think of as, I guess, what the modern health equivalent would be of a 56-year-old in our world. Like, at 56, you're not going to have your body completely ravaged and dying. Your hearing might have lasted longer and stuff. Like, it kind of feels like a transplant in that sense. But maybe it will also turn out that he is just a completely kooky old man who happens to know a remarkable amount about Beethoven. And he does know a remarkable amount. There's details I would not have expected for a series aimed at teenagers,
Yeah.
even just stuff as simple as realizing that the 88 key piano hadn't actually been created by Steinway yet. That is about 50 years after Beethoven dies. Or that Symphony No. 5 wasn't made for piano. That actually was in the decade after Beethoven died. Franz Liszt, I never say his name right, arranged it for solo piano.
Yeah.
So it's there's a lot of stuff that feels like there's a point of contrast. Hakutaku as a series, you never felt like the author either cared or learned anything about game development at all. Whereas from this, you get the idea that at bare minimum, the author has like read a book about Beethoven, even if it's just one book. He even gets when Beethoven's like talking about how Carl and Johann are no longer there because it's been like 200 years. Like that's him talking about his favoured nephew Carl and his youngest brother Johann, like two family members that he actually cared about and who were alive at the time of his death, which is remarkably astute writing. The series is ugly as sin, but like it's actually quite sharp with what it knows. So it's like there's something here.
Yeah. There's also the possibility that this is one of those kind of villainous reincarnation isekai where Beethoven is inhabiting the mind of someone in our modern day.
I mean, it would get around a lot of plot conveniences if it turns out that, like, oh, I actually do have an ID on me. I'm a senile 50-something-year-old who's managed to get out for the day from wherever he was living.
Yeah.
Which, now I say the age every time I say it, I'm just like, I'm not sure how easy a contrivance it would be, but there's a lot of places this could go for what is a very basic concept.
I find it interesting, though. I know we've had some series before where we've done this sort of like, oh, here's an auteur that is, we're going to pull them into modern day and what goes on with that. But like this idea of here's the guy himself, this famous person, and he's existing in this world. There doesn't seem to be, short of some kind of weird, isekai thing or whatever that they want to do. Like he's just this person here. He's not a ghost. Everybody sees him. Everybody can talk to him. He's speaking full on German. And there was this interesting thing they do with the speech bubbles where it sort of like whenever he's speaking, he's got this extra stroke on his speech bubble, this extra thick stroke that I think is supposed to key us into the fact that he's speaking a different language.
Yeah, it has a black tail on the speech bubbles.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting, but not visibly stand out enough that I'm immediately going, the person's talking German in this scene.
Because there's a couple parts in there where like someone's talking and then he's talking and then someone else talks, and it's like it's unclear if anyone else understands what he's saying, because I think they're not supposed to. I think he's supposed to be speaking German to Yasso the whole time, and Yasso is supposed to be speaking German back to him. But then, like, I think it was something about the Fifth Symphony stuff that they mentioned. Who said that? It was the other girl who said that because that's what he played at the competition. Okay, so that makes more sense. But within that same vein, I was thinking that the art in this is really strange. There's like an inconsistency to it where things like from page to page the style is sort of different. It's not drastic enough that you're like, oh, it's a completely different style, but it's like the way that people are drawn, the way that the backgrounds are drawn has a different quality to it page to page.
It's very sloppy, which isn't in itself a bad thing. I think that's usually how authors start out on their first serials and then they develop into something stronger. But it is distractingly so, and there's little little flourishes, like the stuff with how eyes stand out through hair and stuff,
Yeah.
like, is consistent, but it's not a consistently good choice. They're just making that same choice every page.
I think we've seen plenty of series where the sloppiness is a deliberate choice that's being made. But the thing that makes it work is the cohesiveness to it, that the way that they are always doing the exact same sloppy thing. Like, you can tell it's on purpose. This is the style. Whereas in this one, there are some panels that are like very immaculate and attention to detail and everything. And then the next page, it's sloppy again. And it's just like the consistency of this is completely off.
Which is interesting, because most of the backgrounds are almost definitely built using a 3D program.
Yeah. And lots of people are doing that now. I think it's fine. Although there's also something to be said about assistants not getting work anymore.
Yeah, like, which, to be fair, if you are a like first time serialization, like, affording assistance isn't going to be the easiest. So I think having background software is a good shortcut out the gate. But you'd hope this is sort of an early teething issue thing and not something that'll be part of the author's permanent style, because the characters are quite dynamic in their sloppiness, but the backgrounds are incredibly stale and rigid. So it's like you'll be shown the girl Kahoin, there we go, Kahoin, from a bunch of interesting angles, mostly to emphasize certain assets, kind of in an awkward way. Like, it doesn't feel like it's fan service. It just feels like they're going, Jesus, look at them.
The first hero shot of her is so awkward looking.
It's totally tilted up, so like the vanishing point is above her, so her head is very small and her chest is very big, and then like it just goes from there.
And then like her skirt is doing this weird thing where it looks like they're trying to do like, it's the wind or whatever, but it's like it's very strange.
It looks like there's a clipping issue. Yeah. Like if this was a video game, that would be going like every direction.
Right.
But like it's not necessarily bad in itself. It's not good or accurate in the terms you'd think of it with like how you'd be drawing a person in a physical space. But because the physical spaces are very rigid, it like just stands out as being bizarre.
All that said, I do feel like the art is the weakest part of this. And I know that's a deal breaker for a lot of people, but I didn't find it too distracting most of the time. And I would say that being the weakest part of this is actually, I would say, a good thing, because I think that the idea that they have here and the execution of that idea and the writing, I thought was like really, really well done. Like I definitely feel, like you said before, I think they knew what they were talking about when it came to Beethoven and classical music and stuff. But couple that with the fact that there is besides some of the details, there's a cohesive narrative that's occurring here. And the way that the dialogue is written feels correct. And then there's this underlying philosophy that is prevalent throughout this chapter. And I don't know if it's going to keep that, but like, it really did resonate to me. I'm not someone who has experienced a lot of these things and the hardships that they're talking about. I'm not a musician, although I play piano a little bit, but like nothing for real. But it still hit me in the right spot. So I think there's something to go on here.
Yeah, like whilst it's not like friendship, effort, victory in terms of how it's like trying to lay out the plot, I think that that choice to fight on in the face of not succeeding, in the face of failures, in the face of things getting in your way, I think it's a really strong, resounding sort of idea. and it's delivered well by Ludwig van Beethoven within the story, and also because the core idea is strong and the art is weak. When there are moments when the art is interesting, like when Beethoven is yelling about the value of his Fifth Symphony, and the paneling suddenly gets very interesting, and you get this massive close-up of his face, like, yelling in side profile and stuff. I think it makes it more effective. So, in a way, being ugly has allowed the way it's written to shine a lot better. The only real thing with the writing I'm not super hot on is, and I cannot stress enough, it's chapter 1. This could change. I have no idea what Yasuo's personality is supposed to be. Like, it's very up and down, because there's this very sort of stoic, serious angle, and then there's like the sort of slacker side, but then there's also like weird little injections of comedy and ennui and everything. And I think that's because he's a character in an awkward position in his life at this moment. But it also means that I'm not feeling like he's a protagonist yet. And that will come. With a lot of series, it can take as many as 3 chapters before you really know who you've got. But it's...
I think I'm following you there. When you first said that, I was like, oh no, he's a depressed boy. He failed his competition. He fell into depression. He's got a sarcastic bent to him, like he's done with the world. But then, as you're describing that, there's enough other pieces that come out there that, it's not, I don't think it's as simple as that. And there is some wavering to what I was thinking was his personality. So, I think I agree with you there.
Which, again, in a way, has its uses, because I think if he gets past this major block, then we can see maybe a bit more of a dynamic personality come in, because he shouldn't just be defined as being, a very depressed boy. It serves its purpose well for this initial challenge, to have him go and be that stressed out, and we get that little preview of what is sure to be, I guess, what we perceive of as the villain, this long, black-haired boy seen in shadow when he goes to play the piano and's like going, I can't do it. Which is, it's given the full page for that moment, but we're not given anything beyond that. Like, there's your hook beyond the main gimmick, is we know that there is this past to explore, and there's a cool visual to this mysterious opponent.
You're talking about on page 35? Where he says, I can't play the piano?
Yes, page 35. That, the jacketed, long-haired person with the sort of owlish stare.
Yeah, that's interesting, because when I read that earlier, I thought that was supposed to be Coen, who was like, going, you're going to play this. But yeah, looking at it again, that's definitely a different person. So I wonder if it's probably the person who defeated him in the competition, I bet.
Yeah,
but that makes a lot more sense.
Or shook him in some damaging way during the competition.
Yeah.
Also, that whole perspective of it suddenly being like the piano on its side, so it's almost like he has to dive towards it to play it like a swimmer, is really interesting.
So, is there any other thoughts or any notes you had here before we jump into some of the more concrete sections of this show?
Yes, absolutely. At one point, Beethoven mentions universal gravitation, which is, of course, an anachronism, because Yoshi's Universal Gravitation is a Game Boy Advance game from 2004 with a tilt sensor in the cartridge. Do you know what it was called in America? It was called Yoshi's Topsy Turvy, which is somehow the more English-sounding title. So... no, I don't have anything beyond that. Just the second I saw the words universal gravitation, I was like, like this game I recall.
Yeah. I actually, when he first said that, I was like, wait a minute. Wasn't universal gravitation? And I was like, oh no, 1827. Yeah, they definitely had universal gravitation theory by then.
Again, it's weirdly consistently strong with what things are time appropriate to Beethoven's life.
Now, whether or not Beethoven would have known anything about universal gravitation, I don't know, but it was around at that point. I don't know a ton of musicians who care much to learn about scientific endeavors beyond sound theory.
Indeed.
Oh, I just remembered something. When I was doing the summary, the quote at the beginning.
Oh, I never talked about it, did I?
Yeah.
So this is something that I think is only interesting to me. So Hiroko Nakamura is was something of a virtuoso pianist, very famous in Japan, and wrote 4 books. The Savages Called Pianists is the last of those. And what I found interesting is she's so underobserved in any English-speaking language, any English-speaking territory, is that small quote is about as much as anyone's ever translated from that book, ever. Oh. Which is just wild. You think, like, I think we think about how we live in a golden age of manga translation, adaptation and stuff, but there is all sorts of other materials, particularly non-fiction writing in Japan, that just has no English reference. It's never pulled across. So it's like there's this whole world of translation that's still ahead of us that's had previously no interest.
Right. So more like we're in the Silver Age.
Yeah. Like we're in this bold new era, but only for comic books and light novels, and everyone goes, "Oh yeah, well."
We're getting so close, but there's still a ways to go.
And occasionally we do get... Oh, this is going to sound like the bitchiest fucking thing. Occasionally we do get real novels as well. But they're obviously... They're a much larger undertaking. Because there is nothing about a light novel that makes it lesser as a novel. It's just that because they're a series of numbered volumes more often than not, what they really are is one large work cut into pieces. That's literally the only thing that makes it different. It's not a lesser thing. But it is a much easier undertaking, which is why we get those more than we get actual novels from Japan. That and light novels are just wildly popular there because they suit the commuter lifestyle.
Yeah. So, as we do on this show, it's time to talk about our thoughts and opinions, our thinky thinks and our feely feels. So, how do you objectively rate this series? What do you think?
What do I think? If I were to put this as close to objective as possible, I think this is dead in the water failure.
Okay.
I subjectively, on like a personal level, there's a lot of things I find very interesting about it. But there is not an ounce of me that believes this has legs in Weekly Shonen Jump in the year 2025. I think it's simply too rookie a work. I want to say on the Shonen Flop Discord, Joey Weiser, a comic creator of some critical renown himself, was saying that like it definitely needed more time in the oven, and I think that is probably where it comes down objectively. Is there's just little aspects of it, mainly on the art level, that should not really be acceptable for the most mainstream publication in Japan.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. Most of the time when I am thinking about like my objective, what I feel is the objective worth of these, I don't really usually consider where it's being published. I like to take things like on their own merit, which not necessarily the correct take, but I do feel like it's good to let things be what they are. And as we've found in lots of series, a series could be fine. It just shouldn't be in Shonen Jump.
Many things should not be in Shonen Jump.
Yeah. So as far as this one, thinking outside of Weekly Shonen Jump, I would call this good. I think there's a hook here. I don't think there's anything that is egregious about it that sort of knocks it out of any kind of running. But I do think I agree with you that I don't know that this will survive in Jump.
It's funny. It would be very suited. There's like Kadokawa put out a magazine that is designated for the comic freaks called Monthly Comic Beam that has stuff that can look incredibly sloppy, that can be very messy because it's doing something that is thematically interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And this feels like something that would thrive in that sort of environment.
Yeah.
But on a mainstream stage, I can see why it exists. It exists because the series Shiori Experience is incredibly popular from Kodansha. And they went, hey, that had Jimi Hendrix. We can go deeper. We can go royalty-free and not have the rights issues that series experiences. But I don't think that's necessarily going to be anything that will save it. But again, I like it. I like it in a very odd way. It's the same way you would like going to the circus and seeing a bearded lady, you know? It's like, you go, well, this is a unique experience that I'll remember.
Yeah. And to that end, I will say, my feelings on this are, I think it's good. I'm going to keep reading this. I'm interested to see where it's going. I want to know what it's doing. We didn't get enough answers in this chapter to be like, how did we get here? What's going to happen? So I'm looking forward to, let's say 22 weeks of this.
Yeah. Like, and again, we could both be wrong and it could actually thrive because everyone else ends up as curious as we are.
Maybe.
And they should, because I think there needs to be more room for the freaks of the comics world. And this is that. And I like it. I'm actually more eager to continue reading this than I am Embers, even though I prefer sports comics a lot of the time. Just because there isn't a lot like this.
Yeah. I think I'm more excited for Embers, but not for any reason I can really put my finger on. But they're both things that I'm like, yeah, I want to see what's happening next. I actually didn't read Embers Chapter 2 today because I got in, I read this one. I needed to do the summary and everything, so I haven't had a chance to read the rest yet. But I'm really interested in what Embers is going to do. If it's going to do something interesting or if it's just going to be another sports manga.
Well, let me tell you, without spoiling anything, both are still quite possible.
That always happens. So I think everybody can probably guess where we're at with this now, but the question is, from this first chapter, would you buy a volume of this?
Yes, both for the fact that I quite like it, and because I bet the volume extras are going to be really interesting for this.
Yeah, that's definitely a consideration that I haven't thought of before. I'm gonna have to incorporate that in because I don't think about that really ever. But that's definitely a big part of volumes. Is there's other stuff in them than just the chapters that you may have already read.
Like there's clearly room for there to be like extra pages that are just telling you things about Beethoven, which is like, if so, great. It's always possible you'll get one where they put absolutely nothing in because, that happens. I think I got the volumes for I Said Gil, and I'm lucky if it had so much as a couple of sketches in it. But making manga is hard, and working out what to fill your extra pages with when your series has been cancelled, also hard. So I've nothing but sympathies for when they don't. But this has some real potential to just have like super interesting volumes.
So my thought on this was, I don't think I would buy the volume. However, this definitely seems like the kind of thing where if they had it at the library, I'd probably read it all right there in the library. I probably wouldn't even check it out. So I'm definitely interested in it. Not quite enough to put money down on.
A lot of that again will be the different value proposition as well, because you think a volume in English, you're looking at anywhere between like $5 and $12, depending on whether it's digital, physical, etc., etc., etc. And then if you're picking up in Japanese, you're paying £3, give or take.
Yeah, that is a big difference. We pretty much always consider it, between $10 and $12 for a volume, a physical volume that you can hold in your hand. So
yeah, which I would still be willing to pay again for the possibility of interesting extras, but as a series content itself, it would be. It takes a lot for me to commit something for print just on the back of how good the comic is, but I would probably buy like the first volume, and then if I didn't like it, I'd give up on it. So yeah, the volume 1, why not? Why not?
That's definitely fair. And if you buy it next time I'm in England, I'll come over and borrow it.
That's the key. Failing that, I'll run towards the ocean. I'll sort of throw it, and we'll just see how close I get.
You probably get it a good ways.
Yeah. At least a percentage over there.
All right. Well, before we wrap up for today, any closing thoughts on this series?
I think if you were to look at, again, I think you probably, you're right, you shouldn't always just think about the magazine it's in. But if I were to think of the entirety of Weekly Shonen Jump right now as a magazine, and whether I read the series or not in them, like I accept I don't read most of the series, and they do fine with or without me. I think there's two ways you could look at this specific series, how you could look at Star of Beethoven. And that's that there isn't anything in the magazine like it right now. And also, I don't think anything else in the magazine is in as tenuous a position as it could be already at Chapter 1. Which could be fraught, could be a massive bummer, but I think is going to make it really interesting to follow along with week to week.
Yeah. Especially now that it seems like a lot of these series seem to be doing different things week to week as they maybe find out that they're in a precarious position, rushing things along or changing plot lines or stuff like that. So, yeah, definitely something to watch out for. All right, well, thank you everyone for listening to this episode on Star of Beethoven. I'd like to thank B for joining me very graciously. Needed to fill in for Moxie, so once again, thanks for that. Do you have anything that you'd like to plug?
Not massively. If you're an employer in the UK right now, give me a job. I need a job.
Any particular job that you'd like?
Hey, I'm real good at stock administration, so if you want someone to keep track of all the things you stock and how much room you have to stock more things, that's my specialist subject.
All right.
Otherwise, I can learn anything. Find me on LinkedIn and Indeed. I'm not on LinkedIn. I should probably get on there. I need a job.
Use the fancy term asset management.
Asset management. That would sound better. But also in reality, you can find me on Blue Sky at LetMeBB. That's Let Me Be, like leave me alone, and then the bug that flies despite the fact it shouldn't be.
There'll be a link in the description.
Yeah. Where I mostly just every weekday add albums to a living ranked list of albums I've been doing since January 31st last year. There's currently 510 albums on there as of this recording. Best album ever made is Purple Rain by Prince.
Do you know how many albums there are total?
What, before I stop?
Yeah.
In theory, it continues until I die, so... it just became a good excuse to force me to listen to different things. and it has mostly worked, except for when I fall behind and then I have to turn listening to music into homework, which is... Don't do that. Keep your hobbies fun. Don't take them seriously, especially when they're just for you.
I get that sometimes with reading chapters of manga. It's like, I have to read 17 chapters. Oh, I really don't want.
Just to be fair,
You're doing this for fun. Why?
I had to do it with homework for a while. I think last time we were recording, I was saying I was like several months behind on like several series that I like in Shonen Jump, and I think it got to the point where it ended up being about, only 20 chapters, but it's 20 chapters. Like it's not nothing. It's about 400 pages for each series. And I had to turn it into a constructed task. I go, okay, today I have to do 5 of this, tomorrow 5 of this, until I'm caught up. And it was worth it, because now I like the series again and I'm up to date. But no, let your hobbies be fun. Don't make the mistake of turning things into hard work.
There's something about a pile of something that you like just becoming overwhelming.
Nothing makes you hate a thing you like more than having too much of it to look at.
All right. Well, once again, thanks so much for joining me today. We also need to thank Sugoi Mart for partnering with us. Sugoi Mart's a retailer of Japanese snacks, drinks, toys, and merch. They got all kinds of stuff you can't get outside Japan. So our listeners can check the link in the description or use code APR15 at checkout to get 15% off their first order. And we want to hear from you, so check out our social media, which you can find links for on our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com. You can leave comments up on the website for in the episode posts, or you can join us on our Discord and chat with us. We've also got a Patreon where our supporters get perks like bonus episodes, getting to vote on which series we cover on heroin addiction, as well as getting the high-quality stereo version of the podcast early, which is most important on new Shonen Jump series weeks, because these come out like the day the series drops. So that's a perk you want. You gotta listen to this before you read the new series to know if you should read it, right?
It's really important that you have the opinions of everyone on Shonen Jumping the Gun before you consume anything.
Right.
You're not allowed to do it yourself. You need our help.
How are you supposed to know what to think if you don't listen to us?
Exactly.
And of course, we have to shout out our patrons. First and foremost, at our noble tier, we have our marquee, Sir Cake Dwarf. Oh, Moxie's not here to do the fanfare. At our reincarnator tier, we've got Moon. And last but not least, at our commoner tier, we've got Rena and Kill Hour. Thank you so much to all our patrons. Once again, thanks for listening. Don't forget to check out the other series on our feed. And B, hey, we have to finish with this episode. Do you see that piano sitting over there? I'm gonna try and play it.
I now have a sudden need to know what the name was of the dog in Beethoven. Like, obviously...
Like its actual name in real life?
Yeah, the dog actor.
Because in the movie, it was called Beethoven.
I mean, yes, I understand. That is the reason why the film is called Beethoven.
Who was that dog in the movie Beethoven? About the dog.
It had Stanley Tucci in it. It's not really interesting, but you know he's in everything.
It's weird to name a dog Stanley Tucci.
I should name a dog Stanley Tucci.
This is where I need to apologize to all of our German listeners who are well aware that I completely butcher German despite my German heritage.
It feels so much more racist when you're reading it out. But that is phonetically
If it wasn't for the fact that Japanese people understand English when you speak it badly with a Japanese accent.
Absolutely. It's like asking for milk.
Yes,
you can't ask for milk. You have to ask for miracle.
It's ridiculous.
Ooh, yeah, go on.
You just get some... Wait a minute.
I like the idea of going to play the piano and just being like, I'm going to say the noise. Dun, 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 dun.
Actually, that would turn out better. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun.
It's like, no, Dan to Dan's the other series. You're But no, it's been... I'm glad that you thought of me to go and be on for this. It was nice to top
You
on
were
and
my
have a fun
first
show.
pick, just so you know.
There you go. Flattery gets you everywhere.
Especially, I think... When did I reach out? I think it was before...
It was about 2 weeks ago, I think.
What day was it? The 29th? I can't remember if that was before I knew what last week's was or not. But then when I read Embers, I was like, damn, it should have been this one. This was the one.
Well, as someone whose family home has a quite an old piano in it, it actually worked out quite well. I have to say that because I can't say it as someone who plays piano because I'm lucky if I can do anything that involves two hands.